Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. This is Shaka from Shaka Gaming, and we've got another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video for you, everybody. Today we're going to be checking out the top 10 free-to-play friendly, we'll call it friendly, Conquest teams that you guys should be looking into using if you want to advance your progress in Conquest. Now, before we get into that, guys, I want to point out one thing. First of all, obviously, we've been on a little bit of a hiatus here for the past couple of months. I want to thank everyone out there that has been patient and has stuck with us through those times. I was going through some real-life stuff. Ram is currently going through some real-life stuff, which has put a hold on Rogue Actions. The good news is we're moving forward. We are back to running at full steam here, guys. We're going to be doing, we're putting out shorts now on the channel. We're live streaming just like we were before. And now I'm going to have content coming out beyond just Rogue Actions content as well. So, super excited to get the channel back up and running, guys, and create some swgoh content with all of you. With that being said, let's get into the actual video, guys. Alright, so first and foremost, guys, we are, like I said, looking at the top 10 free-to-play friendly Conquest characters. Now, this is a bit debatable as to how free-to-play friendly we're talking here, guys. In my book, free-to-play friendly means that it's something that you can get without having to really drop a ton of money on it. Obviously, some of these are going to be more geared towards early game accounts. Some of them are going to be a little bit more geared towards end game accounts. I like all of my videos to apply to everybody across the board. So hopefully, wherever you are in the game, you can get something from this. With that being said, we're going to start with what I deem to probably be the easiest free-to-play friendly teams to start with. So first of all, we have Phoenix plus Krex. This is probably, without a doubt, the #1 free-to-play friendly team out there. Krex obviously is a marquee character. He is a later game, quote-unquote, marquee character. But even if you're just starting the game today, he's accessible. You can get him. There's no reason that you cannot farm Krex and have him up and running with this Phoenix squad. Plus, the rest of the Phoenix squad itself is obviously very easy. Why are they so good? Well, we'll get into that in a little bit more detail here in a moment. But just know that they meet three key criteria. Try saying that 3 times fast, guys. That we'll talk about here with the next couple of teams. Numbers 9, 8, and 7 all kind of follow in the same vein to some degree here. So we have the Dash Scoundrels as our number 9 team. Again, all marquee characters. No special events required, anything like that. Number 8, Night Sisters plus Marin. Marin is a key factor here, guys. Again, a marquee character. Number 7 introduces us to kind of our one little ripple in our equation so far. 10, 9, and 8 are all just marquee characters. CLS is a legendary character. However, at this point in the game, he's not too difficult to get. Obviously, Chewie is also a legendary event as well, unlock. So we've got a couple of characters in the CL squad that are more difficult to get, but those first 3 in particular are what I deem to probably be the absolute most easiest. Now, let's switch over to the game itself and talk about why these teams, guys, are so good. First and foremost, all of these teams, all of them, guys, have buffs spread throughout the team on a fairly regular basis. They also have a decent balance of support characters. We'll talk about that more in a second as well. And they all put out a pretty decent amount of debuffs as well. So in my opinion, the key to Conquest, guys, is that you meet 3 different criteria. You have a lot of buffs, you have a lot of debuffs, and then ideally you've got some support characters that are going to be pretty healthy and chunky. That is met in spades with all of these teams. Krex is a support character. He can be pretty chunky when you get him up to high relics, guys. And this team has a ton of buffs and lands a ton of debuffs. The great thing about the Krex Phoenix team is that they also are turn meter loops. And they gain turn meter when they're attacked. There's a lot of reactivity to this team. Very, very good. Highly, highly recommend that you guys consider this one out the gate. Dash is actually, in my opinion, not quite as good as the Phoenix Krex team. But they're a little bit more, I would say, Cairo friendly. They're probably a little bit more friendly. It's debatable. But again, same idea here, guys. Lots of buffs, lots of debuffs, and Dash in particular is a support character that just does monster damage, guys, when he's given the opportunity. So the question might be, why are we talking about support characters? So guys, there's kind of key data discs that we looked for so far in Conquest. One of them is Zealous Ambition. If you're looking for a Zealous Ambition data discs and you get it, these characters that are support characters are going to absolutely blow things up. Healers would obviously be included in this scenario as well. For instance, IG-11 is a healer. He is another great one to throw into that team and does some monster damage as well. The debuffs, we talked about debuffs. They're super important. Volatile Accelerator plus Amplify Agony is such an important data disc combo that if you get that, you're going to just wipe out entire teams with debuffs that you guys do. Which leads us to kind of the Night Sister team. Obviously a ton of debuffs here. They don't have quite as many buffs on them as some of these other 3 teams that we've got here, but they do still have it, so it helps a good bit. So again, Amplify Agony is your best friend when it comes to debuffs. The other nice thing about all of these teams is that they, for the most part, are fairly reactive. So for instance, Vandor can revive people when he's got, oh, I'm totally blanking on what the name of that is. Prepared, there we go. Like I said, Phoenix gains turn meter whenever they're attacked. The Night Sisters, sorry for Fritz back there, guys. The Night Sisters obviously do a ton of reviving. That's a massive benefit. And then CLS teams do a ton of retribution, ton of counterattacks. So very, very reactive comps. Plus, there's a lot of turn meter gain mechanics in all of these teams as well. So, great teams, great mechanics that really make them work well in the different scenarios with Conquest. Now, back to our top 10 list, guys, here. So, we have the next kind of tier of this is where we get to a little bit more difficult. Like I said, 7, the CLS squad, that involves some legendaries, so it's a little bit more difficult than 8, 9, and 10. But number 6 in particular is getting to the point where it's really pushing more to late game. So Bad Batch here, yes, they're all marquees. I get that they're all marquees, guys, but this is the first team that we have that is just an absolute Cairo nightmare. The CLS squad, not any really Kairos beyond gear, getting to relic levels. Same thing with the Night Sisters, Dash, Phoenix. Outside of those new marquee characters like Marin and Krex, the Cairo Crunch isn't that bad. The Bad Batch Cairo Crunch is enormous, and it is not fun at all. But when you are able to get this team up and running, guys, it does do a lot of work, and it falls kind of into our 3 key categories that we're looking for here. 1, they do a ton of debuffs against the opposing team. 2, they get a ton of buffs on themselves, so they can stack offense, things like that over time. And 3, there are some support characters in here as well that can do some really massive amounts of damage. The one downside to this team, guys, that I would say is that they're not as reactive as some of these other teams that are on this list. If I was doing a true, best to worst kind of ranking, this would probably be my worst team, if I'm being completely honest, simply because if you don't get out ahead and you're not first, they are not near as good. They just don't have that reactivity, that kind of bonus perk that we're looking for. So keep that in mind. Even though this team is very, very good, especially in like sectors 1 and 2, maybe sector 3 of your conquest, when you start to get into sector 4 and 5, guys, you're not going to outrun your opponents, and you might run into problems with this team. So just be aware of that. You can kind of tell though that this list is not a pure top 10. We're kind of putting it in order of difficulty farming wise, but also how effective it is as well. Now, our next team that we have, guys, is, I would argue, a significant upgrade over Bad Batch. But we have our first real bottleneck in terms of a player or a character, and that is Wat. Grievous plus Wat. This is arguably the MVP of my Conquest, guys, prior to me getting Jabba. Now that I have Jabba, it's a little bit different, but if you're someone that does not have Jabba yet, this is your absolute MVP team, guys, because all of those use a non-force user feats, this is what you roll with. Get Grievous, throw Wat into that team, and my goodness, it's so easy to beat all of those feats. It's phenomenal. Even if you have to do something without a GL, this still applies to that situation. Plus, this team as a whole, guys, like I said, is relatively not difficult to farm outside of Wat. Yes, Wat is a little bit tricky because it is involving RTBs, especially if you're a very early game player. But I really recommend you guys hard focus on this team and Wat, especially, obviously, because he's an amazing player outside of just, Conquest. He's phenomenal in all game modes. He allows so much theory crafting for your roster. He's really a great, great character. I can't recommend him enough. Now, in terms of why does this team work so well, guys? So it's pretty straightforward. 1, lots of debuffs. 2, very reactive. This is a very, very, very reactive team. Anytime anybody in your team gets hit, B2's gaining a ton of bonus turn meter and then wiping all of those buffs off of the opposing team and getting assists from B1. So there's a lot of assisting from this team. There's a lot of reactivity to this team. The one downside I would say is they don't get a ton of buffs. There are buffs there. They do happen. They do exist. But it's not quite as good as some of the other teams that we've had earlier in this list. But money for money, pound for pound, guys, this is probably my #1 personal favorite team to use in Conquest. It is just such a good team and can do so many things. For those of you who don't know the mechanics of this, guys, Wat takes that bonus turn. You want to put the tank tech on Magna Guard. And then usually you're going to put your other stuff wherever you want to, but that's the key one. If they're so strong that they actually defeat your Magna Guard, which can happen sometimes, good news is Wat revives them. So you're back and you're doing great and you're all fine and dandy. You'll get your full 3 stars on your Conquest. Again, absolute great team. Cannot rave about it enough, guys. All right, that brings us now to number 4. And we're actually going to kind of look at the next group of 3 here in one sitting because they all 3 have something in common. At number 4, we've got the Mandalorians. Number 3, we've got the Sith Empire. And number 2, we've got Padme plus Cat. Now, I can hear all of you new players out there right now just yelling at me. But Shaka, those are all Conquest characters. We have to go through Proving Grounds to get them. Yes, you do, guys. I'm sorry. But I have to make a video that applies to everybody, guys. I'm trying to get everybody. You focus on 8, 9, and 10, guys. Later game players can focus on 2, 3, and 4. It's a win-win for everybody, guys. All 3 of these teams arguably are the best teams in this game outside of GLs, obviously. They can do so much work in so many different situations. They are phenomenal. Mandalorians, a little bit different than all of our criteria that we've talked about before. They are very good, but they're a little bit less reactive than what some of these other teams might be. The reason they do work fairly well is because they pass the taunt around. So it's really hard to kind of single in on any one character. Plus, if you have Bam in this team, guys, there's a good chance he's going to be able to save somebody and keep them from dying. So yes, there is some reactivity. It's not as good as some of the other teams that we've had on this list in terms of reactivity, but it's enough that it can usually kind of help you to survive in certain situations. The real benefit of this team is the debuffs and the assists, the attacks out of turn. If you have any kind of data discs that's bonus, like Perseverance, for instance, where you're getting bonuses for attacks out of turn, or if you're doing debuffs with Amplify Agony, this is a team that's really going to do some big time work and just melt your opponent down to the ground. Survivability, like I said, on them is a little bit more questionable because you can get one shot pretty badly with this team if they have the capability to do that. You're not going to run into that too often, though, in Conquest. Our Sith Empire team, this is kind of a weird one. So you can actually make this work without Malgus. But I threw Malgus in because I wanted to keep the whole, Conquest character theme going here. You can actually do this without him and just run, for instance, Revan, Malak, Basti, Marauder, and Sith Empire Trooper. You could still make that team work. The big bonus of this team, guys, so one, obviously, they have less reactivity. But they have a ton of debuffs. So Amplify Agony with this team just melts people. Limited buffs in this variation of this team. We're going to talk about that in a second. There's actually variations on this team. I will run either this version, or what I'll do is I'll flip-flop it and put Malgus in lead and put Talon in the 5th slot instead of Marauder. Usually if I'm facing a team that is going to be a little bit more turn meter driven, like the Ewoks, for instance, I will switch it and run Malgus in the lead. That way, we're able to gain some turn meter to their turn meter and eventually get a turn to stop them cold. The other nice perk of this team, this is the big benefit against the Ewoks in particular, guys. This team cannot be stunned. So if you're facing Ewoks, I also prefer this team against Old Republic because they would also attack out of turn constantly and just annihilate you. But because of the fear mechanics that we have on this team, it shuts them down. So those are two teams that I always use this against. It's just a great go-to team against the Ewoks, the anti-stun, availability, as well as the ability to fear your opponent. Again, very, very reactive squad. Under the Malgus lead, still fairly reactive under the Darth Revan lead because of fear also being a thing. Now, Cat and Padme. This team, much like the Sith Empire teams, guys, can work without Cat. But it's just not near the same. You could throw Gas in there, you could throw another Galactic Republic in there, and it's just not going to hit near as hard as what Cat does. She really is essential for this team to be super great. But even if you don't have Cat, early game, guys, this team still works. Throw another Galactic Republic character in there, and you're going to do fine. The nice thing about this, again, is reactivity, folks. We have Jedi Knight Anakin gaining a bonus turn, Padme gaining a bonus turn anytime anybody goes below 50% health. Great team in terms of reactivity. The only downside of this team, I would say, is there's not a lot of debuffs. So if you're running a heavy Amplify Agony kind of setup, this probably isn't going to be the best bet for you. Really, you're going to get a lot of benefit from this with Zealous Ambition. That's something I should also mention, guys, with the other two teams that we have on this list, the Mandalorians and the Sith Empire team. If you're running Zealous Ambition, those two do not work quite as well. Those are very debuff heavy teams, or attack out of turn with the Mandalorians in particular. If you're running Zealous Ambitions, though, your Padme team is going to be a far better option than those two are. Again, every one of these teams, guys, is going to have one level of sort of weakness, whether it's the reactivity, whether it's the debuffs, whether it's the buffs, or whether it is the support characters or healers. You're going to have at least one of those areas as a weakness. The key is to try to find 3 of those areas that are not a weakness. If you can find that, you're going to do a lot better. Now, that brings us to our last team, guys. This is arguably the #1, and it's probably not even arguable, the #1 best Conquest team in existence. And again, this is arguably free-to-play friendly, similar in lines to the Bad Batch squad to some degree. I hate to say it, but it's Inquisitors plus Reva, guys. You can make the Inquisitors themselves work, but man, Reva takes it to a whole nother level. If you're early game, the downside of this team is just like the Bad Batch, the Kairos. There are so many Kairos required for this team. It's insane. Probably the #1 most Cairo heavy team in all of swgoh. But the rewards are massive, guys. There are buffs everywhere. There are debuffs everywhere. You have support characters all through the place. You have massive reactivity when you have Reva in the squad. That's a key difference there, guys. You lose some of that reactivity and or bonus turns, essentially, when you don't have Reva. You throw Reva in the mix, and it's just a whole nother level of amazingness. Now, this is the one team I also do not have, guys, because I hate Inquisitors, if you didn't know. But you choose your own destiny, folks. It's your game. Play it the way you want to play it. If you love the Inquisitors, go get them. They're going to be a great team for you across the board in Conquest. This is probably the one team that actually meets all of the 4 criterias, which is crazy. But they have support characters. They've got healers. They have they have buffs. They have debuffs. They have reactivity built within their kits. It's just such a good team. You really cannot go wrong with it, guys. Absolutely phenomenal team. There. Are you guys happy? I said something nice about the Inquisitors. You should all be happy now. Guys, let me know. Let's go ahead back and check real quick. Just our top 10 overall, guys. Let me know what you think of our top 10 list that we've got here, guys. Do you think this is accurate? Is there something that you think we may have missed? I'm sure there is. I'm really intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. Also, those of you that are early game, I'm intrigued to see how free-to-play friendly you think this is. Because obviously, I tried to mix this up and have a little bit of late game as well as early game. But me being a late game player, I'm intrigued to see just how well or poorly I nailed the early game free-to-play aspect of this, guys. Let me know in the comments below, everybody. I would greatly appreciate it. All right, last but not least, everybody, if you enjoyed today's video, guys, I would really appreciate it if you guys left a little like there. More importantly, if you guys want to continue getting more swgoh content, guys, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. And last but not least, guys, if you want to continue your journey down that swgoh rabbit hole, make sure you check out the next video.